Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, well, let's just say we're going deep, really deep.
Deep into one of those events that just, I don't know, they just grab you and won't let go.
Right. Like the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been decades, but there are still so many questions.
And every time you think you're getting close to some kind of answer, another layer peels back.
And today, we're peeling back a layer, focusing specifically on, well, the rifle, right? The one Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly used.
Exactly. And we're not sticking to the well-trodden ground of the Warren Report this time.
No, sir. We're going further, exploring research from the third decade.
A journal, I might add, that's fully dedicated to uncovering what really happened to JFK.
Yeah, Volume 5, Issue 4, from 1989 to be exact. And let me tell you, this issue is packed.
Packed with analysis, investigations, first-hand accounts. This is serious stuff from people who've dedicated their lives to this case.
Okay, so let's start with this rifle, right? The alleged murder weapon. There's an article here, In the Name of A. Heidel by Jerry Rose, and boy, does he shake things up.
He really does. I mean, he goes straight for the official narrative, digging into those postal records around Oswald's supposed P.O. box in box 2915.
Where the rifle was sent.
Right, and what he finds is, well, troubling, to say the least.
Like what? Give us the juicy details.
Well, first off, there are these discrepancies between the P.O. box application and a Dallas Police Department evidence list.
Okay, so two different documents. What's the problem?
The application shows Oswald using his real address, totally normal. But then the police document, this is the weird part, it lists the P.O. box, same number, but under the alias A. Heidel, and get this, with a totally different address.
Hold on. So the records don't even match. Come on, that's like a huge red flag, right?
Absolutely. And it gets, if you can believe it, even stranger.
Lay it on me.
Rose points out, and this is key, that the post office couldn't produce Part 3 of the application. Yeah, the part that specifically lists who's allowed to pick up mail from that box.
So without Heidel being listed, how could Oswald even get a rifle addressed to that name?
You see the problem. It's like a crucial piece of the puzzle is just like gone.
And Rose is saying this missing form, plus all these other inconsistencies in the postal records, it points to, well, something fishy going on.
He even questions if Oswald could have even sent the money order to Klein's Sporting Goods in Chicago.
The place that sold the rifle.
Yeah, given his work schedule and when the post office was actually open, I mean, it just doesn't add up.
So are we saying someone messed with the records? Or that, I don't know, someone else could have been involved?
Look, Rose doesn't outright say that, but he makes a pretty compelling case for a deeper investigation.
He's not buying the official story.
No, and he suggests that someone else ordering the rifle, maybe even without Oswald's knowledge, is definitely on the table.
Okay, so we've got potentially messed with postal records, a timeline that's all wonky. But what about the rifle itself? Anything unusual about it?
Oh, you bet. Another article here, this one's called The Twice Hit Haul by Jim Herzejewski, and he brings up a very curious detail about the ammunition.
Okay, hit me with it.
Well, he describes how one of the 3 empty cartridges they found at the Texas School Book Depository.
You mean where Oswald supposedly fired from?
Exactly. One of those cartridges had these markings that indicate it had been hit twice.
Hit twice.
By what?
By the firing pin.
Wait, what?
Twice.
Now that's weird. I mean, what's the significance of that?
Well, Herzejewski theorizes that a real pro, maybe someone with ties to organized crime, could have fired the rifle the night before.
Why would they do that?
To get a pristine bullet.
Okay, pristine bullet. For what?
To plant at the scene. Think about it.
Plant a bullet? What are you talking about?
The magic bullet theory. The idea that one bullet caused all the non-fatal wounds to both JFK and Governor Connolly. Herzejewski thinks this twice-hit casing could be proof of a bullet that was specifically prepped. Just waiting to be found. So that magic bullet might not have been so magical after all. Maybe planted to cast doubt on the whole single bullet thing.
It's a theory, but it's a chilling one.
Chilling is right. Because if that bullet was planted, then somebody went to a lot of trouble to frame Oswald.
And that raises a whole other question.
Sure.
Who? Who had the motive and the means to pull something like that off?
Okay, so far, we've got potentially doctored postal records, a timeline that just doesn't make sense, and now this twice-hit casing that could mean a planted bullet. Where does all this leave Oswald? Did he even fire the rifle?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, look, the articles we're digging into today, they don't definitively prove Oswald was innocent, but they do raise serious doubts about the evidence they used to tie him to that rifle.
And if we can't be sure about the rifle, what else should we be questioning? This same issue of the third decade has a memo from Sylvia Meager.
Ah, Sylvia Meager, one of the most well-respected researchers on the JFK assassination.
And this memo of hers, it's like a roadmap of everything that doesn't add up, all the loose ends.
A very long roadmap. It's like a guide, for anyone trying to understand this whole JFK thing. It's not about, crazy theories or anything. It's about looking at the facts, the hard evidence, and seeing where the official story just doesn't hold up.
So she was all about, like, evidence-based research, no speculation.
Absolutely. Her main concern was the investigation itself, how it was conducted, especially the autopsy report.
Right, because if that's messed up, well, the whole thing falls apart, doesn't it?
Exactly. And Meager, she points out all these contradictions between the official report and, what witnesses said, what other evidence showed, even statements from the Warren Commission's own lawyers.
Okay, so she's finding holes in the official story.
Yeah.
Like what specifically?
Well, for example, she questions the bullet wounds, where they were, what they look like, the whole thing.
Is she saying someone, like, changed the autopsy report, like, deliberately?
She doesn't, point fingers or anything, but she does say it's possible that what we're looking at today isn't the original version. Like, there's this discrepancy in the description of JFK's neck wound.
A neck wound.
Yeah, J. Lee Rankin, he was the commission's general counsel, and he gives this description during a closed-door meeting, and it doesn't match the official report at all.
That's bizarre. Why would there be different versions of such an important document?
Meager thought it was really important to figure out if there were any earlier drafts, or if it was changed later. And when that final report, which doesn't even have a date on it, was actually written, she wanted to know who had access to it, who changed it, and why.
It's like a chain of custody, right?
Yeah.
For evidence. You got to be able to track who had it and when. Otherwise, how do you know it's legit?
Exactly. And it's not just the neck wound either. Meager also brings up the head wound.
Another bullet wound.
Right. The Fisher panel, they were a group of experts who looked at all the medical evidence, and they said the bullet entry wound in the head was way higher than what the autopsy report said.
So they got the location of the head wound wrong. That's a huge mistake.
That's what the Fisher panel concluded. And it makes you wonder about those autopsy photos and x-rays, how accurate are they? It also throws a wrench into the whole single bullet theory because that relies on the bullet's exact path.
Man, it's like every time we look closer, we find another problem. First,
Yeah.
the postal records,
Yeah.
then that bullet casing, and now the autopsy report is all messed up. It's hard to believe this was just a simple open and shut case.
Yeah, and then there's that receipt. Remember we talked about that, signed by 2 FBI agents for a bullet they took out of JFK's body?
Yeah, the one that contradicts the autopsy surgeons who said they didn't find any bullet.
Right. Meager was adamant that this needed to be explained. It's either a massive screw-up with the paperwork or something way more deliberate. And then there's that whole magic bullet thing, Commission Exhibit 399.
The one that supposedly went through Kennedy and then hit Connolly.
Yep. Meager thought that was incredibly unlikely, given what the evidence showed. She said they needed to look into whether that bullet was planted or even swapped out for a different one.
Hold on. You're saying someone could have planted that bullet just to make the single-shooter theory work?
It's a possibility they needed to consider. And Meager also wanted to see if maybe there were more than 3 shots fired that day. She pointed to the witnesses, their stories didn't line up, the number of wounds, the types of wounds, even marks on the curb and the pavement. It all pointed to maybe more than 3 shots, maybe even from different places.
It's like she's building a whole different picture of what happened in Dallas.
She's not just accepting the official story, that's for sure. She wants the evidence looked at carefully, the inconsistencies explained, and the questions answered. And she had a lot of questions, especially about the Dallas police, the FBI, even the Warren Commission itself.
What kind of questions? Give me an example.
Well, she felt like there was evidence of, people working together to hide the truth, lying under oath, and evidence disappearing, specific witnesses, problems with how things were done, evidence that might have been planted. It's all in there.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot. Let's break it down a bit. What about the witnesses? Who did she find suspicious?
One of the biggest examples she gives is Charles Givens. He was a key witness, said he saw Oswald on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository right before the shooting.
Didn't he change his story a few times?
That's exactly the problem. His first statement, it actually suggested Oswald might be innocent. But then later on, his story changed, put Oswald right near the sniper's nest, made him look guilty. Meager thought that was really fishy.
It does make you wonder if someone pressured him or, I don't know, forced him to change his story. If you can't trust what the witnesses say, what can you trust?
Exactly. And it's not just givens. Meager also looks at how the Dallas police treated Oswald. She says there's evidence that they never actually officially charged him with killing JFK.
Wait, what? He was never charged.
That's what Meager says. She points to all these inconsistencies in the official reports, and there's even an FBI report that says, straight up, there was no arraignment. She thinks they might have done that on purpose, to keep Oswald quiet.
To keep him from defending himself, that's messed up.
Yeah. And there's more. Meager also looks at that gray zipper jacket they supposedly found on the 6th floor, the one they said belonged to Oswald. She says the police radio logs, they contradict what Captain Wilfred said about who found it and when. It casts doubt on the whole thing, makes you wonder if someone tampered with it.
Okay, so we've got iffy witnesses, the police messing things up, and maybe even planting evidence. Is that it?
Not even close. Meager also questions those famous photos of Oswald. The ones where he's holding the rifle and the pistol.
Those were like the biggest pieces of evidence they had against him, weren't they? Are you saying those were fake?
Meager thought it was definitely possible, especially with all the inconsistencies and the fact that no one seems to know where those photos came from. Like, they weren't on the list of stuff they took from Ruth Payne's garage, where Oswald kept some of his things, and they don't show up in a photo of all the stuff they took from the Payne house.
So those photos just, appeared?
Pretty much. And then you add in the work of this photo analyst, Fred Newcomb, and it makes Meager think that maybe those photos were faked. She also questions the fingerprints on the rifle. The whole way they were discovered is just weird. Could be more fabrication.
So now we're not even sure about the most basic evidence connecting Oswald to the assassination.
And that doubt, as Meager says, it goes all the way up to the FBI.
What did she find wrong with what the FBI did?
She points to how they kept quiet about Oswald visiting the FBI office in Dallas, and how they destroyed a note he left for Agent Hosty.
Hold on, they destroyed evidence. That's not right. Why would they do that?
Meager thought it was all part of a bigger plan by the FBI to make the Warren Commission think Oswald acted alone.
It sounds like you're saying there was a cover-up. If Meager's right, the whole investigation was a mess from the start.
That's one way to look at it. Her work shows how important it is to question everything, to really look closely at the evidence, especially when it comes to something as important as this.
It's kind of scary to think about, that something so big, so important, could be so full of mystery.
It is. But Meager's work, it shows us that we got to stay curious. We got to keep asking those tough questions.
This deep dive has been, well, a deep dive for sure. Started with how Oswald supposedly got the rifle, and now we're questioning the whole investigation.
That's how it goes with JFK, though, isn't it? It's a rabbit hole, and it just keeps going deeper.
And Meager's memo, it really shows us, reminds us, that we can't just accept what we're told.
Nope. Gotta look for ourselves.
Her research is amazing, so detailed. It really shows how complicated this whole thing is, how many things just don't add up. Makes you wonder, really wonder, what happened that day in Dallas?
It's a question that just keeps people coming back, doesn't it? Researchers, historians, everyone. We might never know the whole truth, but we gotta keep asking, keep looking at the evidence, and keep pushing for answers.
This whole thing, it's really shown me how important it is to think for yourself, Not just believe what you hear, especially when it comes to something this big.
Couldn't agree more. This case, with all its twists and turns, it shows that we need to be skeptical, we need to question things, and we need to keep searching for the truth, even if it's hard to find.
Well, we've definitely had a lot to think about today. If you're listening and this is, piqued your interest, I really recommend checking out the source material yourself. The Third Decade, Volume 5, Issue 4. It's full of amazing insights and research.
And remember, this is just one piece of the puzzle. There are tons of books, articles, documentaries, archives, all about JFK. So keep digging, keep questioning, and who knows, maybe you'll find something that's been hidden all these years.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep searching for the truth.